Here's Gilgeous-Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddy, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is Uthart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested Podcast, coming to you live Sunday, February 11th, on the heels of a back-to-back Thunder mid-afternoon games. We got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, though, you're probably part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm your host for the evening, Jacob Niffen. Got my guy, Justin Peabody, with me.
Hello, everybody.
And the one and only Nick Crane.
We are so close to All-Star Weekend, and it is much needed. Like a palate cleanser, if you will.
Needed for you or for the basketball teams? Or C, all of the above?
For the timeline, we'll put it that way.
Oh, okay. No Taylor tonight, as I think he is currently naked in his neighborhood after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, probably getting arrested for indecent exposure. So be on the lookout on the internet for Taylor tomorrow. JD is a little under the weather, so he is out today as well. But we're here. We're going to talk some NBA hoops. We're going to talk a little bit of trade action, some free agent signings. But first, guys, before we do all that, I want to tell you guys, thank you so much for watching on youtube.com. If you are in the chat and live tonight, we appreciate you. Go hit that like button while you're watching the video. It's literally the easiest thing you could do while you're watching this video, and it helps our podcast out so much just by helping curve the algorithm for more people to see the show. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you for downloading our show. Drop a 5-star rating. And if you're watching the replay on YouTube, you can still hit the like button, write a little comment as well. It always makes my heart happy to get on the internet the day after a podcast and see all the YouTube comments on our show. Unless they're people talking shit, then I don't like it. So be nice. Gentlemen, we have two games to talk about. They are two very different games. The Thunder went down to Dallas and got their butts kicked 146-111. And then they came home today, 24 hours later, and beat a team they have not beat since Darius Bazley was starting for this team. Godspeed to all of us. They beat the Kings 127-113. Nick, I'm throwing it to you first. I guess we start with Dallas. Let's go chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
Big themes, takeaways, thoughts, opinions from the Dallas Mavericks loss.
Before I give you a theme, I want to correct you on your slander. Darius Bazley will be in Indianapolis for All-Star Weekend.
As one of those G League guys?
Yes. But he will be there nonetheless. The Mavs game, I think there's a lot of things that went wrong. Like, we could probably talk for hours about all the things that went wrong in that game. Shai post-game kind of gave the high-level, simply put, watered-down version that was basically they were the better team that day. They gave more effort that day. They hit more shots that day. They followed the game plan better that day, and they did everything right, and the Thunder did almost nothing right. I will say, defensively, they were really, really, really bad overall. I gave up a ton of points, especially in the first quarter, though they did make it a 4-point game. In the second, they had like a 15-0 run of their own to get back into it. The second half's a whole different story. But the first half, I didn't blame it all on the defense. Like, Luka was hitting some stupid shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was, I think, what was it, 47 first quarter points? It was like a
47. They almost got 50.
Like, at least 15 of those points were some of those, like, you shrug. Like, oh, great shot. Like, I don't know how you defend that better. Like, step back with a dude in your face falling backwards, or the one he got fouled and, like, threw it behind his head, got the and one, and it's just stuff like, I don't want to even complain about defense on those kind of shots. Like, that's just a dude feeling himself that night.
Yeah, I think the defensive things that were more frustrating weren't the just shrug your shoulders and walk it off Luka shots, but like all the alley-oops over guys' heads on the backside and just like communication breakdowns, like trying to send like a double or a hedge on a Luka screen and somebody completely whiffs and he just splits the double team and gets like a wide open layup and thing. Those were the defensive problems that really kind of drove me crazy in that Dallas game. And that one goes to a little bit of everybody, right? Like that was a horrible team effort defensively, I thought.
That's what I was going to say. Is I do think it was a bit of both and. Like the Mavericks shot near 80% in that first quarter, and it felt like, I don't know if they took the comeback, the last time they played, not personally, but like that might have been in the pregame pep talk for that one for the Mavericks. Like they wanted to make a statement, and kudos to them. Statement made.
Mm-hmm.
But like you're saying, Jacob, I think the defensive rotations and communication just felt slow all day. They were not keeping up with what the Mavericks were throwing at them. And the Mavericks took as good advantage as anyone could possibly take, right? The Thunder gave it to them on a silver platter, and they went and took it. And it was both of those that made that such a unfun game to watch for Thunder fans. I think it was a thorough in-hand victory for Dallas, where Oklahoma City, like you said, they kind of gave it away from the get-go in the first quarter. They made a valiant comeback-ish to keep it somewhat interesting for a moment, but it was Dallas's day on Saturday for sure.
One more thing I'd say on that game before we dive into some more specific stuff, like post-deadline day rosters, like that kind of felt like a trap game for a couple, like the afternoon stuff. Luckily, they cleaned that up today, and we'll talk about the Kings game. On top of the fact that the Mavs had like 2 brand new rotation players
who played awesome.
Kyrie Irving is recently back, and like he's getting back into his groove. I think all around the league, you generally see teams like first, second game with their new guys, like they're energized, they're pumped up. Those guys are motivated. The crowd's super hype. And like, incoming to the game, PJ Washington. Everyone's like freaking out in the stands. Like it's a lot of momentum and a lot of in game plan wise too. Like you ask Mark pregame, how do you game plan for those guys? And it's like you don't know what they look like in that system. You can't game plan for a guy you've never seen play on the Mavericks roster. Not to say that like it's an auto win for Dallas because they had 2 new guys and you can't game plan for it, but for a lot of reasons, like in hindsight, it's like, am I shocked they got blown out that game? No, for a few reasons.
One thing that I don't think really got talked about a lot in the aftermath of that Dallas game is the offense. Like the offense was bad. When you look at the overall stats from that game, the Thunder shot 38% from the floor. Of the 98 shot attempts the Thunder took that game, 47 were threes. They got out free throwed. The Dallas took 12 more free throws than the Thunder. And a lot of times I take issue with that. You can't take issue with it when half of your field goal attempts come from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
And credit to Dallas for their, like, how they were defending the Thunder, which was don't let Shai and don't let Dub get into the lane and make other guys beat you. And we will dive into that shortly. We're not going to, we've got a segment to kind of talk about some of the offensive woes and maybe the roster building and guys that aren't currently fitting with the team. But offensively, I just thought they were really, really bad in Dallas as well, shooting 38% as one of the best offensive teams in the league. They just they couldn't attack Dallas the way they wanted to.
Yep. Not hitting shots, not playing, I think the same style that they succeed with. I think there were times where they were settling for shots. I think there were times where they were, we say it a lot of where it looks like they're overthinking the plays. I think we saw some of that in Dallas. I think it happens quick when you get down early like that. You start pressing a bit. And I think that's all it was. I think it's kind of like the snowball effect where Dallas came out like they were, and all of a sudden, like immediately in the middle of the first quarter, you are under pressure as the Thunder we got to make a run or like we're out of this thing. And I think that the issues just compounded themselves and it got worse and worse for OKC.
Any surprises in terms of rotations and who got minutes. Jacob, I'm curious from your point of view.
Say it one more time.
Rotations and who got minutes, especially early. Like, I know Mark is historically known for, if the main guys aren't getting it done, I got no problem throwing in like the end of the bench guys to give a spark. But was it surprising to see like early, and not just early, but significant, like in kind of pivotal times, like Lindy and Usman and some of those guys playing?
A little bit. I mean, it's kind of what I've come to expect from Mark, so it doesn't catch me too off guard. The Usman minutes are kind of interesting to me because it's like he is guaranteed 6 minutes, like the final 3 minutes of the first quarter, the first 3 minutes of the second quarter. Then he doesn't see the court again, like the rest of the game. And those 6 minutes are very hit or miss, like very hit or miss. They're more miss than hit, but there wasn't a lot from the rotation that really caught me off guard. And we can talk about the Kings game here in a second. Maybe there were some more interesting things from the Kings game today that we can jump into. But Justin, one thing that you were kind of talking about there, the kind of overthinking the offense and things like that, I think a big theme from that game was just the first quarter and how you could just tell by the 10-minute mark of the first quarter, just I don't want to say effort, because that's like insinuating that they aren't trying hard and don't want to win the game. I don't believe that's the case. But I think Mark uses the term force a lot. The force they played with, like they didn't have much of that. And if you were to watch the first 5 minutes of the Dallas game and then immediately watch the first 5 minutes of today's Kings game, it looks like two different teams. Like the level of aggression and force and aggressiveness that they played with today versus yesterday was pretty substantial, I thought.
Yeah, I think just like I said, it maybe the comeback the Thunder had against the Mavericks made its way into a pregame speech for Dallas, and they came out and wanted to make a statement. I feel like the same could be said for Oklahoma City today, coming on the heels of that Mavericks loss. Of anybody can lose to anybody. You have a chance to go like clean slate, wipe Dallas off everybody's conscience, and come out and play with force, execute at a high level, be tight on your rotations, finish at the rim, do all the little things that this team has made its bread and butter on, and go take care of business. And they did that today. And I think, again, it's encouraging to see a young team. They're not going to be perfect all the time, but when you have the opportunity to bounce back, to do so, and to do so against a very good Kings team that's honestly dominated this matchup in recent years, that feels good to see from this young team for sure.
Definitely. So we're kind of transitioning to the Kings game, so let's just dive into that one. A 127-113 win for the Thunder today against the Sacramento Kings. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, the first Thunder win over the Kings since 2021?
Yeah, December of 2021.
December 2021. It was 8 straight losses, I believe.
Yep.
Today kind of broke a lot of things for the Thunder. It broke a losing streak to the Kings. It broke a series of really bad afternoon games for the Thunder. And still this season, they have not lost 3 games in a row. If they lost today, that would have been 3 in a row for the first time all season. They don't get there. Like, I think that's a sign of a team that is maturing. And we know that they love to preach the 0-0 idea.
Yep.
I think not losing 3 in a row is like the manifestation of that almost. Like a lot of teams, you lose like you did in Dallas, that bleeds over, especially on the second game of a back-to-back. It can bleed over really easy. This team doesn't let that happen. And I think the resiliency was something really great to see tonight.
I think it's a consistency thing. A lot of teams, take Cleveland, for example, who I don't have their record pulled up, but they're up there with Oklahoma City now, like similar record, top 5 or 6 in the NBA. And they're on a heater. They've won it was 12 of the last 13 or something, if not crazier than that, 17 of the last 18, something crazy I saw last night. But they were really bad before that. And so there's a lot of really high peaks and really high value. That's how a lot of teams are. They'll win, 5, 6, 7 straight, and then they'll kind of like teeter around and they'll lose 4, 5, 6. Oklahoma City consistently, as up and down as it feels at times when you're in the moment and like you lose a big game or you win a big game, consistently this team just kind of stays level. Like they have the win streaks. They haven't had like a crazy win streak this year, but they also haven't lost 3 games at any given point. And I think you'd rather have that. I think that speaks more to the quality of a team than the long win streaks and the long losing streaks that kind of balance out to the same record overall.
I also think a potential factor for today, right, is you had Dub and Isaiah Joe coming back against Dallas, but that first game back, that can be up and down. I think those guys made their impact incredibly known today, one more than the other probably, but I think really nice to have those pieces back in the lineup. I think really solid minutes from Jay Will. He was somebody, again, to kind of dip back into the Dallas game. He didn't get played until pretty late in that Dallas game, which felt weird given the size that Dallas has. It felt like a game where Jay Will could be useful. He came in late again, like you mentioned, Nick, of like some weird lineup, not weird, but different lineup choices being made in that game. Today, I think he had a solid game, a solid performance. And I think it goes to show that, again, this team is more successful when they are playing to their strengths. And I think that having a guy like Jay Will and the role that he is so good at playing for this team, it helps elevate their game as a whole. I think having J-Dub just go insano mode obviously helps a lot. Having Shai be Shai obviously helps a lot. I think there's so many positives to take away from today's bounce back performance.
J-Dub and Shai today combine for 70 points. I think it was on like 67% shooting, 75% from 3 or something like that. Those two are just world beaters. Nick, that stretch at the start of the second quarter where J-Dub was running the show, that might have been the best stretch of basketball I've ever watched him play. And he's had some pretty freaking significant stretches of basketball.
Yeah, I think it's, to compliment him further, that 15-0 run in Dallas, which was like got them back in the game. It was like a 4-point game. Was with Shai on the bench and Dub facilitating. This is not me saying the Thunder is better without Shai. But he has proven now, time and time again, that when he's on the floor without Shai, he is more than capable of being the guy. He's not just like capable of being like the 6th man that can score a bunch of points. He is capable of being the guy on a highly effective offense against a really good team.
He's so good, and he's so much fun to watch. Like the way that he plays, while there are some similarities, like you can tell he's picking up some tricks from Shai. I liken it a bit too with in the Shai Chris Paul year, where you could see Shai start to pick up some of those Chris Paul techniques and moves and just some of those savvy things that CP3 did. You see some of that in J-Dub, but he's a totally different animal. Like he brings so much explosiveness to the floor every time he has the ball in his hand. Nick, I think it was you that tweeted it, like J-Dub going left is unstoppable.
It's
like
unstoppable.
His athleticism is so hard to guard. And you compare that with Shai's kind of like methodical jerkiness. That combo is so dangerous because of how different it is. Like it's not like you're kind of swapping the two out and they, are playing similar styles. Like there's such a contrast there that I think having that, it's like thunder and lightning. Like it keeps the defense on their toes at all times.
So Meek Leak has an interesting comment in the chat. Can you imagine what Dub's trade value would be? I don't want to talk about that because he's not on the market. He never will be. But my question is like, and I don't want to go through and list the players and like do the math for real, but like top of your head, somebody's like, hey, Justin, Jacob, how many guys in the NBA would you actually trade J-Dub straight up for? What's that number? What's the ballpark?
I'm biased, so my answer is not great.
0.
I don't know, man. Like that's really, really, really difficult.
It's one of those things.
So.
Maybe, what's the answer? 10, 15?
I'd say probably 15, 20.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you're not going to do it for anybody that's in the same tier as him, right? Like,
you're not doing it for Cade. You're not doing it for Scotty.
Yeah. I'm going to butcher the, like, is it a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush? I don't know what that phrase means, but that's a thing. That's a phrase. Anyway,
never heard that.
You put your bird in your hand wherever you want, Justin. All right. There's no judging on this podcast.
The point is, like, a player that you have and you know and is in the system, like, you're always going to value that higher than somebody outside the system, even if they're on a similar plane. Thank you, Smoot, backing me up. I said the phrase correctly. But so that shortens the pool. So I think when we give this number, it's not saying that Dub is the 15th best player in the NBA, right? Like, there's a way you could read that statement and come to that conclusion. That's the wrong way to read that statement. I think you also, when you're talking trade value, like, you have to factor in age, you have to factor in contract, you have to factor in all that kind of stuff. I think that number feels right, again, without actually, like, looking at a list and going through it. It'd be really hard to part with Dub. And so I think it would have to be somebody that is like a tier or two above Dub. And is proven in that sense in order to pull the trigger on it.
For what it's worth, J-Dub today, 32 points on 13 of 20 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3, 8 rebounds, which is a big rebounding game for him, 9 assists. On the season, J-Dub is up to 19 points on 54, 45, 81 splits. 4 rebounds, nearly 5 assists, and a steal a game. If the Thunder are in the top 4 of the West next year, I think it'd be a crime to keep him off the All-Star team. I know the West is stacked, but what this kid is doing is insane. Like, he's so good. Justin, you were mentioning the athleticism. I wish I had the clip to pull up here on the stream, but whenever he was cooking there in the second, he had a play where he went left, kind of turned his back to the basket, turned back around, planted with his right foot, and jumped like 5 feet backwards and hit like this crazy fadeaway. And I was like, how the hell do you have the strength to get that ball like to the rim and the touch to like make the... He's insane. He is really, really, really freaking... The fact that they got him and Chet in the same draft... That's cheating. Yeah. Like, that is just flat out cheating. Like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Overall, guys, the Kings game today, they came with more force. They came with more energy. They came with more aggression. The big guys, meaning like the important guys, played awesome. We mentioned Shai and Dub. Chet went 14 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, which is like not a super exciting line, but 2 steals and 4 blocks. And I just felt like you could feel the difference in the defense, especially at the rim when Chet was on the floor tonight. Yeah. Like, it was a massive, massive difference. The bench didn't have a great night. Kenrich Williams led the bench with 6 points. Jay Will did play 22 minutes. We saw some big lineups tonight. Aaron Wiggins didn't have the best game. Cason Wallace only played 10 minutes, which was kind of surprising because I thought he had one of his best games of the season down in Dallas. Smoot in the chat mentions Lou had a great bounce back game today. After a poor game against Dallas, Lou came out today, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3, hit all 4 of his free throws, 9 rebounds for Lou, 3 steals, just making De'Aaron Fox's life hell. Like, I thought the response, that's what you want to see from your team. And like, I feel so much better about the Dallas game because the way they responded in the Sacramento game.
Yeah. It was great to see one more thing for me on the Kings game. Great to see Kenrich have a better game. The 7 games before today against Sacramento, do you guys know what he was shooting from the floor past 7 games?
Probably like sub 30%.
32.1%.
Okay.
That he takes a lot of shots, but when you're a guy that is low volume, you kind of want to make the most of it. He's missed some kind of bunnies and some shots that you're like, just dunk the ball, you don't get your shot blocked. It's
that one against Walker Kessler really sticks out.
He's like quietly such an important piece because, and we'll talk about the addition of Biyombo and what he can provide and lineup flexibility. But today, without Biyombo, it's like, do you want to go small? You go Kenny. Do you want to go big? You go J. Will. And when Kenny's not playing well on both ends, frankly, it's like you can't really be successful with the small ball when he's not at his best, and he's not been at his best of late.
Totally agree. Any other thoughts from those two games, guys?
I don't think so.
I like today better than yesterday.
Just a little bit. Nick, we did get a couple of super chats. Do we want to hit those before we take our first break of the night and transition?
Yes, let me throw some of those up here. So the first one's especially for you, Jacob. So it's a question you got to ask or answer, and I think it'll actually transition us nicely here in a bit. But better for the Thunder right now, Josh Giddey or Darius Bazley?
Josh Giddey. It's not close. It is not close.
Not taking the bait there. Huh?
No, I know David has been just teasing me, so I totally get it, David. Appreciate the super comment, by the way. But yeah, it's Josh by a country mile.
Agreed. Another one here from Alan. He mentions it may not mean much to most people, but seeing Gordon Hayward on the bench with the team today is really awesome to him. He's super pumped to see him play with the Thunder post All-Star break. As a reminder, if you guys didn't know, he is on a return to play protocol. Mark said yesterday he probably could play today if he needed to, but given he's a fresh face on a team he's got to get integrated into and probably a fairly significant role, just better to plug him in after the All-Star break, give him the extra, it's probably end up being like 10, 11 days of rest by not playing the 3 games with Oklahoma City after being traded, which is smart. Like, you need this guy in the playoffs, and if that gives him the extra rest and longevity, I think injury management program with him is super important. From you two, anything the past 2 games that like make you envision like, man, if Gordon was in right there, or Gordon could have helped here. I mean, Dallas game, you could have prime Shaq, and you're probably still screwed with that defense. But
that's bait, Nick.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
We will hear it on the other side of our first break of the night. If you're in the live stream, hang with us. We will be right back. And we are back. So Nick wants to know about where we would like to see Gordon Hayward in these past 2 games. Justin, we have a starter we need to talk about still. But let's dive into the Gordon Hayward aspect of it for a second. Justin, just from what we've heard about Gordon, apparently, like Nick just mentioned, like he is healthy. They're just keeping him out. They're going to slowly onboard him. Mark today said that they're going to pick both Hayward and Biyombo's spots when they play, put them in a situation, in a role that they can succeed in, and slowly build them up. They're going to be very methodical. They're not just going to throw them in and let them play. Fans might riot because of that. I get it, but I'm like a kid on Christmas Day, Justin. I just unwrapped the Nintendo 64, the lime green Donkey Kong edition. I want to get that damn thing out of the box. I want to get it plugged in. I don't care about the other presents. I don't need a 1-hour limit a day on my new video game console. It's time to play, and I'm going to play all day.
These are very specific memories and feelings, it seems like.
Hey, my 10-year-old birthday, got that N64, was one of the greatest days of my life. Until my brother, as a 5-year-old, deleted my save file on my memory card when I was on the last level of Donkey Kong, and I came home from school that day, and my dad just looked at me and said, "Brother deleted your game." Oh my gosh. That son of a bitch. Jeremy, I'll never let you live it down.
Clearly not still bothering you. On the note of Gordon Hayward, it's super exciting. I think that I was getting to the place where I didn't think a big move was coming. I didn't really think a significant move was coming of any kind. I don't know that you can maybe necessarily even categorize Gordon Hayward as like a big move, but it was bigger than I was expecting.
That's what she said.
I could see it in your eyes. I think that the number of players involved, like trading meats, like that's not nothing. It was more of a swing than I was expecting. Gordon Hayward could absolutely crush in Oklahoma City. It could also not pan out, right? Like not to get like too excited about it, but it could be that we get Charlotte Gordon Hayward, which is like good but not great, and maybe doesn't gel with the lineup. But maybe Charlotte Gordon Hayward is not the Gordon Hayward that we get in Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City is not Charlotte. And that's the part that I keep coming back to. Like, we've seen so much basketball over Gordon Hayward's career that makes me excited to watch the Thunder team with Gordon Hayward. I think what he can bring to this team in size and shot creation ability, like having an extra shot creator on this team, somebody that can go out and get their own bucket, but also like not somebody that he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands all the time to be effective. I think that fills a void that this team has. I think that shores up some shortcomings that we've seen, especially in games recently. Like, yes, does plugging Gordon Hayward into the lineup against the Mavs mean the Thunder beat the Mavs on Saturday? Probably not. But does it maybe look a lot different? I think so. And I think that's a lot of assumptions, but I think this team has a lot of areas that Gordon should be able to come in and improve pretty quickly, assuming the health is as good as we think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's no question to me, if he's healthy, like zero. I think it's a very, very high % chance that he works out, given we've seen other much less talented, less experienced players thrive in a role that he's going to have.
Yep.
Like Aaron Wiggins, I don't think his role is like fully diminished with Gordon Hayward coming in. But if Aaron Wiggins can do what he does, just being like the secondary guy out there and letting the game come to him, imagine Gordon Hayward doing that on this team.
Yep. That's what I was going to say, Nick. You look at guys like Kenrich Williams or Aaron Wiggins or like even an Ousmane Dieng, but you take those guys and it's like add a ton of NBA and personal experience and success to that style of basketball player and put him on this team. Because that's kind of what he is. Justin, you mentioned maybe Charlotte Hayward like isn't the real Hayward. Charlotte Hayward this season before the injury was 15-5-5.
Yeah, still not bad, right?
Yeah. The style he plays, what his personal game is like, I think just his philosophy of basketball, like making the right move, making the right play, playing a smart, high IQ level of basketball, like I think he's going to be awesome for this team. I proposed it on deadline day whenever the trade got announced. The past 2 games have done nothing but make me feel even stronger about this. Mark's comments today that they're going to like slowly bring them on dampens this feeling a little bit. But I feel like by the time we get to the month of April, hell, halfway through March, I think Gordon Hayward's in the starting lineup.
My question to you is, does it matter?
So I know your point of view on this, Nick, that starting doesn't matter, 2 closes. To an extent, I think it does matter.
Tell me why.
The slow starts that Oklahoma City has had recently, especially on the offensive end. And the way teams guard them to start the game. I think getting in that rhythm early is important. And I wonder if starting Gordon Hayward allows you to get in that rhythm when you don't have the opposing team center just standing under the basket because they're on Josh Giddey and they're just completely ignoring him. This is kind of the transition I want to get to as well. Like, I watched Dallas Mavericks on Saturday afternoon. watch Josh catch the ball at the 3-point line and literally turn their back to him and look to get a rebound because they did not care in the slightest if he had the ball because he was no threat to them at all. I think if you put Gordon Hayward in that starting lineup, Josh is 21. He's got a lot of room to grow. Lord help us all. I hope he grows a lot. And I know this isn't the best situation for him and this like being the fourth guy and not having the ball in his hands and yada, yada, yada. And I think his confidence is just completely shot as well. But minus out of bounds plays, I don't know what Gordon Hayward does that is worse than Josh Giddey at this point.
The way he's playing lately, for sure.
Defensive, offensive, shooting, like obviously the passing.
Yep. He has, right? We all know that Josh has potential. We've seen it. We saw it a couple weeks ago. He had a really great game. And the problem is the consistency. And I think this season, he's not found the success in the role that he's playing this season. Which makes somebody like a Gordon Hayward very attractive to consider, right? Maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe you try it with Gordon and it doesn't work out and you go back to Giddy. Or maybe Giddy keeps the starting role. And to Nick's point, you try Gordon as a closer, which is not different than what's already happening. Like Giddy's not closing a lot of these games. So maybe, right? Like that's not a big shift from what we've already seen happening this season. And it could just be Gordon Hayward playing that role instead of somebody else on this roster. I think the thing with Giddy that is sometimes overlooked in the discourse, I feel like there should be like a trademark after the phrase "the discourse." One is like his age, but also I think more specifically, it's the microcosm of a season. I forget who posted in the chat, but like the highlights of his game against the Pelicans, and going back to less than one season ago in a playoff type environment, it was a play-in game, played an excellent game. The way teams defend him looks completely different than it did in that game, which is obviously a very large contributing factor to his performances. But I also think the role that he's playing on the team this year with the emergence of Dub, with Chet Holmgren being added to this team, like his role looks very different. And his play style looks very different. And to me, what it reminds me a lot of is a lot of our discourse around Lou Dort last season of very different situations, but very obvious last year, Lou Dort playing a role not suited to his strengths, not playing in a play style that is doing himself or the team favors most nights, really struggling, shooting way too much, not finishing at the rim. All he's doing, like other than defense, what does he do? Right? That was the conversation last year. This year, totally different Lou Dort. Playing differently, playing a different role, taking different shots, finishing a little better, shooting better from behind the arc, and being more choiceful about those shots, not being as high volume of a shooter. Like there is a very real scenario in which Josh Giddey comes back next season, playing a completely different role, much more suited to his strengths and his abilities and what the team needs. So like, I don't think it's a sink or swim this season. Like if Josh Giddey can't figure it out this year, then ship him off to whoever else wants him, right? That's a lot of what you see on NBA Twitter. I don't think that's necessarily the case because we just saw it with Lou Dort. Like I don't think anybody's having the same conversation this year about Lou Dort that they had last year. And I think there is a world in which the same thing happens with Josh Giddey.
Can I play devil's advocate on that for just a moment?
Please.
I agree with a lot of what you say, especially the comp to the Dort discourse last year and the changing of the role. I think the big difference there is the role that Dort needed to get put in was a reduced role. Mm-hmm. And last year he was playing in an increased role.
Yep.
I think it's the opposite this time around, where Josh needs an increased role with on-ball reps.
Yep.
To be more effective. And that the Dort's role was bound to come back down to earth with the emergence of Dub and Chet just waiting to play. unless there's an injury, there's not a scenario next year where you come in and say, yeah, we're giving Josh a ton more on-ball reps this year when you have year 2 Chet, year 3 Dub, and Shai coming off of what I'm going to say, at least a top 2 MVP finish. So like the opportunity for Dort to get put in his ideal situation with it, which is lower usage, was kind of inevitable. I think it's the exact opposite for Josh. I don't see a world where he's getting more on-ball reps and more usage because there's guys that are just better than him.
You're talking about a natural lead guard that's best playmaking for others versus a guy that is very clearly an off-ball guard. It's a whole different scenario. I think, to Justin's point, a change in role is the challenge right now, and we very well next season could see that be alleviated. He figures it out. You find the different role, whatever it might be, and it's not a conversation anymore. But it is different in what that role change actually is. I have a question for you guys. So Jacob mentioned slow starts, right? Especially of late. It feels like that's happened a lot. I'm not going to like break down the numbers by like month or recent games versus beginning of the season games, but like big picture of the season. And I know you can stagger lineups, and your starting lineup doesn't necessarily dictate how you play in the first quarter because your whole starting lineup is not going to play the first quarter. But I want you guys to tell me first quarters this season. Where do you think Oklahoma City sits among NBA teams in offensive rating? First quarters.
I bet it's pretty high.
I think it's pretty high too because they've had some stupid first quarters this year.
What do you think it is?
And Shai's just insane. Top 7?
I was going to say top 10.
3.
Hot
What do you think
day.
their defensive rating is in the first quarter?
That I'm going to say
Bottom half?
Like 18.
15.
Okay. So right at mid.
Second quarter's offensive rating. Where do they rank?
I'd put that closer to the middle, like 15.
I think so too.
18. And what do you think their defensive rating in second quarters is?
10.
I bet the defense is top 10. I bet it's pretty good.
It's 3.
God.
So
okay.
I'm not saying my reasoning for this. Okay, so I am saying my reasoning
Explain,
for keeping Josh in the starting lineup because it's working in first quarters offensively. Because we have and we should talk about Josh's defense because it hasn't been great, but we want to talk about the offense and teams playing off. Like something's working most first quarters offensively with Josh on the floor for a lot of it.
I think that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
But it's working, right? You're a top 3 team in the West. You're a top 3 offensive rating. It works, right? Second quarter, something's not working offensively. Also, probably because Shai plays most of the first and not a lot of the second.
Right.
So why not? So you just talked about Usman being like the first three of a quarter kind of guy. Why not have Gordon Hayward be like a last 5, first 5 for his first rotation?
Could be.
Close out the first, start the second.
You said that's for the season, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like we don't need to dig deep into this, but I'd be interested to see what it is over the past 15 or 20 games.
Exactly what I said when I started this that I was not
Yeah,
going to do.
trends.
But I agree. But I agree. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Because I think
We're not going to dive into it, but
teams have gotten more aggressive in playing off of Josh Giddey, and I think that's the effect that Jacob you're getting at.
Yeah. And I think it's both sides of the ball too. Like it is very clear that teams do not care to guard him offensively. Defensively, the one that really stuck out to me was that Utah game where Colin Sexton would bring the ball up the court. Lou Dort would be guarding him. Whoever Josh was guarding got called up to set the screen. They would force the switch, and it was Colin Sexton straight into Josh Giddey. I counted it as 5 straight possessions, 4 buckets. The 5th possession, Josh got his hand on the ball and stripped it out, and then got subbed out of the game because it was very clear that the strategy was as simple as let's find the weakest link possible and just beat it and beat it and beat it and beat it until the chain breaks. I don't think Josh is that bad, right? I think there's a lot of things contributing here. But you just, and this isn't for you two, just I think more the collective Thunder hive mind.
The discourse.
You cannot deny that he is a pretty substantial net negative at this point in time. And I think he plays bad. And as any 21-year-old would be, you feel bad. You feel like you're letting the team down. You feel like low self-esteem and low confidence.
Snowballs.
And it snowballs. And then he comes out the next game and it gets worse. And we're kind of seeing it spiral. What's interesting is this team has always believed in like youth development, right? Like put them in these challenging situations, let them figure their way out of it, and they come out on the other side better. I'm kind of interested to see, is that going to be the mindset moving forward when you're number 3, number 2 in the West? Or is it, let's get somebody in there who can fix it and who can be better?
Yeah. I think my final take on Josh and Gordon starting, so I think it's the rabbit hole they're in right now. I would not be opposed to Gordon starting by any stretch. Like that would be awesome. He should also close. That said, I think we talked about this team has not lost more than 2 games in a row. I think it will take something like that happening, losing 3, 4, 5 games for a change. I just
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
If you continue at this pace winning and you never lose more than a couple in a row, I just think this front office and this franchise is like.
What about when it comes to the playoffs, though, Nick? Like,
well, that's a whole different story. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, but to me, that mindset is what kept Perk on the floor for 5 games in the NBA Finals.
We're not talking playoffs here. We're talking regular season.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're winning games, but it's almost like you're winning games in spite of this thing happening. And I just wonder if they say like, yeah, the offensive rating is good. And we are, haven't lost 3 in a row. But there's very clearly when you like just scrap the data and you just watch the game, this thing is happening and it is bad for the team. Yeah. And we need to address it. Like, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
In football, I mean, you could have the best, one of the best offenses in the league, and you're winning at a really high rate, and you could have the best, the top seed in the NFC. Your offensive coordinator is not going to come in and say, you know what, these 2 receivers are kind of playing bad. We're going to pull you out. We're going to change our. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know.
It takes adversity and actually tangibly losing games in the regular season, I think, to make that big of a change.
It's going to be interesting.
Not that I agree with that philosophy. I'm saying what I think this team will do in the regular season from a starting line.
They clearly, this franchise has always valued continuity, and I think that's but they're much smarter than us. There's a reason they're the ones running said franchise, and there's probably a lot of value in that. And totally. I think you see that that's probably why they haven't lost 3 games in a row this season, is because of that continuity. So I don't disagree with that at all, Nick.
We talked about rotations earlier, Justin.
Yeah,
you're seeing a lot more Josh getting pulled quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mentioned that that situation with Colin Sexton in that Jazz game. Yeah. You saw it in the Dallas game. You saw it today in the Kings game. Yep. When he comes in and things start to deteriorate, they're a lot quicker to pull the trigger. I kind of expect that to continue, maybe to even a quicker trigger when Gordon Hayward is playing.
Yeah,
because that trigger is now Josh is playing bad, but the guy we're moving into his spot is an Aaron Wiggins, or maybe it's a Cason Wallace, where when it's, oh, he's playing bad, but we can pull him and put in a veteran Gordon Hayward. I think that allows you to pull the trigger a little bit quicker.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's a lever the Thunder will have at their disposal for, to Nick's point. If Josh continues to start, you always have that option ready to go. Like that, Gordon could be the first guy off the bench in a theoretical scenario where you pull Josh and have Gordon come in. Do I think that would be beneficial to Josh's long-term play? Like, probably not. I think that probably contributes to the snowball effect that we were talking about. But competition, internal competition breeds excellence. And I think that's Josh, no matter how young he is, like, right, we did make the excuse earlier of like how young he is. He's still growing. He has room to develop. That's all true. And that's all fine. And that's a lot of what this team is. But the fact of the matter is now, like you said, Jacob, Gordon Hayward's sitting on that bench and he's available. He's almost available. He'll be available and he can come and deliver for this team. And that's never been necessarily the option. Like you said, like the guys you're bringing off are Aaron Wiggins, who is a fantastic player, but like we all know what Aaron Wiggins is. Same with Casey.
First time Mark's going to have something like that.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what makes the dynamic different. It's going to be fascinating to see. I mean, I'm in a perfect world. Like I think the discourse has gotten so toxic to where it's like, well, who are you supporting? Are you supporting Josh or are you supporting Gordon? Right? Like it's an either or. Like why not?
In the age of social media, every argument has to be black or white.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat said that the Thunder fan base is going to run Josh Giddey off. Like, okay, but let's be real. Why can't they both be good? Like that's the ideal scenario, is that maybe Josh's role changes now and maybe Josh responds to it now. And maybe Gordon Hayward comes in and is great. And come April, we're looking back at this trade like, wow, we didn't even realize it back then. But like Gordon Hayward coming in helped both of them. That's the ideal scenario. That's a win for everybody. And so like, it doesn't have to be this either or. Do I think that's the most likely outcome? Probably not. But like, there is a world in which something like that happens.
My last thoughts on it before we move on. I'm just talking about what I'm seeing on a basketball court. And like, I feel like a lot of people take it as, oh, you're a Josh Giddey hater. You hate the kid. You want him to fail. You want him to. No, dude, like he's a 21-year-old kid playing on the basketball team that I like and that I podcast about. I want the kid to succeed.
Yep.
I'm just reacting to what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing isn't good. And I don't know. At some point, it's like, man, we all just need to collectively like log off the internet and go touch grass for a little bit, like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, I think we are going to see Josh's minutes continue to decrease. I think as long as he's healthy, Gordon Hayward's minutes will increase to the point where when we are in playoff basketball, Josh Giddey is playing minutes in the teens and Gordon Hayward is playing minutes closer to 30 and closing games. I think that is, to me, when I look at the team and I see what is happening and I see the way they're guarded and I see the way the defense is reacting and I see what opposing teams are doing to Oklahoma City on offense and I see the trajectory, that is what I foresee happening. Now, if Josh comes out the rest of the way and shoots 50% from three and forces people to step out and guard him and not ignore him and he makes layups, could all change. But the trajectory that I'm seeing as somebody who wants Josh to succeed is that this thing is going downhill more than it is going uphill.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. On the other side, let's talk about another trade. I guess not a trade, but another player the Thunder acquired. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Nick, the Thunder have signed Bismack Biyombo.
Sure have.
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, let's not collectively get ahead of ourselves when we think about what he is and what his role is. I'm guilty of it. I probably tweeted something along the lines of, Thunder got the backup big they needed. And they did. They did. That doesn't mean, and this could change, like he could come out and fit like a glove and ball out. I don't see him as a guy, if there's 29 games after the break remaining, something like that. I don't think he plays every single game. I view him as a a tool in the toolbox. So this in the Slack, where depending on the matchup and what you see from the starters and kind of how the game's unfolding, he has another option to play backup big. Some games, it may be a whole lot of Kenrich and not a whole lot of real backup bigs. Some games, it may be Kenrich is actually playing more wing, and you go with a J. Will or a Bismack. It's like, do we need floor spacing in a big body, or do we need rim protection and a traditional big that can really rebound the ball with a 7'6" wingspan to go play backup big? I don't think it's a simple depth chart, starting center Chet, backup center Bismack, Biyombo, and he's going to play every night for X minutes. I think it's really going to be game to game, situational. What do you need? And plug them in those moments. And it may be 4 minutes one night. It could be 23 another night. It could be a DNC the next night. DNP.
What is
DNC?
That's
Well,
an oil and
you
gas
said it.
term.
You got to come up with something right here. What
Drilling
is
and
a DNC?
completion. That's an oil. I'd say that word too much. So I think he's a tool in the toolbox, which going into the playoffs is what you want.
Yep.
Same with the conundrum between Gordon and Josh and Kaysen and Wiggins and all these other guys. You want the tool. You go in your pantry for a midnight snack. Do you want 12 things to choose from depending on how you're feeling and what sounds good? Or do you want just a few? You want the optionality, right? And that's all this is.
This sounds like I'm gonna put on a lot of weight.
Well,
That's
don't. He's no. You stick with your rice cake with peanut butter and chocolate chips, whatever you do on it.
It's the
Those rice
same.
cake slap, bro.
It's the same thing you were saying earlier, Nick, of, what the Thunder have been doing is working, right? Like Oklahoma City is where they are in the standings because it's working. So as much as everyone can sit around and yell about not having a true backup five, it's working. And you can't ignore that, like long term, right? We're not talking about small streaks. We're not talking about spot games. But I think that is exactly what Biyombo is. I think you nailed it in that they're not going to blow everything up and all of a sudden Biyombo comes off the bench when Chet comes off the floor. He's not eating up all J. Will's minutes. He's not eating
I think
up
that's the
all
interesting
Kenrich's
discussion.
I think he'll take some, but I think
it's situational, right?
Situational, exactly like Nick said. Like I think that was a perfect summation of it. It is an option that they didn't have before. Like I mentioned, man, it's weird that J. Will didn't play against the Mavericks because they're big. Like, take a step back and realize what a stupid statement that is, because like J. Will's not a traditional big.
Mm-hmm.
If Biyombo was on the bench, you go put him out on the floor against Dallas. And there's lots of other teams where he makes a lot of sense. But even against teams with big traditional guys at the five, Oklahoma State has still found success without a traditional five. And like at some point you have to realize that just because you don't match up doesn't mean it's always a problem.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting, we talked about this pre-deadline, or maybe it was post-deadline, pre-Biyombo, where fans were, it definitely was, because fans were pissed Oklahoma City didn't get a backup big. And we talked about this, like, hypothetically, you go get this big, and it does fix things, but also hinders things. Biyombo is a great example, and this is why he will not play consistent, regular, significant minutes, is because he is a 50% free throw shooter. He has never made a three-pointer in his career. And so while he can gobble up rebounds and maybe protect the paint better than some other backup big options, you can't play the same way you play when he's on the floor. Like, there's going to be a tangible change in what Oklahoma City does offensively when he is on the floor. And some nights you will need that. Like, okay, we can't run 5 out and run and gun transition like we do with a Chet or with a Kenrich at the 5, but maybe you do need to switch it up, or like bust the zone, or something's not working offensively. Like, he will help, but he also hurts you in other ways that are kind of ways that the Thunder make themselves stick out by being really efficient from the free throw line and really good from beyond the arc. And he doesn't do either of those things. So that's just a perfect example of how it's not just as simple as go get a backup big that can rebound. Andre Drummond.
I could see Biyombo, like, if he was activated, I could have seen him getting 5 minutes today just to get some run against Domantas Sabonis, a guy that just wants to back you down, and shoot a little baby hook over the top of your head.
Or mirror his Alex Len minutes. They're not going to hurt each other, but that gives you something.
Those types of matchups in situational, hey, Chet's got 3 fouls in the first half, and we want to get a bigger defender in there for a few minutes who can set a good screen and let Shai come off of it for 3 minutes to end the half against Denver and Jokic, right? Or to guard Anthony Davis, or like situationally, I can see that. I think Jay Will has been playing really well lately, and I don't think that this move indicates that Jay Will is not going to play anymore. Like, I mean, I don't know what else I can add to what Nick already said, that it's going to be situational, and it's another tool that you have in case. It's almost like the break glass in case of emergency type of tool. I do not expect Bismack Biyombo to play every game the rest of the way for OKC. Maybe half. It's kind of where I'm at.
Agreed. And it'll probably vary in the playoff series too. There may be a first round playoff series where he doesn't play a single minute, and people are thinking like, man, what a waste of a 15th roster spot they used back in February. And then round 2 comes around and this dude's playing 17 minutes a night, game 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like the difference. Like that's just what this is going to be.
Totally agree. Any other thoughts on Bismack Biyombo? I do love that the Thunder, whenever they officially announced it, they included his franchise record rebounds against the Cleveland Cavaliers in like 2016 playoffs.
Yeah.
To me, that was the ultimate. We got a guy that will rebound the ball. Now, will you all shut the F up?
Yeah.
That's 100% what that press release was.
And he does, to be fair. Like,
he's an animal on the glass.
He's an animal on the glass.
28 rebounds is it's like a Wednesday night for Dennis Rodman. Before we get out of here, Justin,
yes,
we got to update the predictions.
Please do.
Okay. We have some movement in the prediction board. This last week was not kind to most of y'all. Can't say the same about me. I'm coming back, y'all.
You know that gif of the Undertaker coming out of the coffin? That's Justin right now.
I've been taking some swings in recent weeks, and with the exception of the Dallas game, they've been paying off, and I'm not sitting so far behind anymore. The updated standings, I'm sitting in last still, but much closer at 24 points. We have JD and Jacob sitting at 26. And then a tie atop the leaderboard. Taylor is now joined by Nick Crane.
I will say this, and Jacob, I'll let you explain how Orlando works with a 1-game week, but I'll tease this. There's a world where Justin jumps from last to third before the All-Star break.
Very, very true.
If Oklahoma City hadn't crapped the bed against Dallas, I'm third right now. So close.
Dang.
So last week there was 3 games. There's 5 of us, which means there was 15 total predictions. We went 4-11. Why do you guys listen to this podcast? We clearly don't know what the hell we're talking about.
And
I think we all flipped Dallas and Sacramento.
Mm-hmm. It's exactly what we did. This week, gentlemen, we have 1 game to predict. That is the Orlando Magic. National TV, Tuesday night, down in the house the mouse built. LeBron's Lakers ring. When there's only 1 game, we all know what the money ball is going to be. So we're raising the stakes this week. Typically, the money ball is your lock of the week. If you get it right, you get 2 points. But if you get it wrong, you lose 2 points. We're ratcheting up the stakes a little bit this week, though. It's a 3-time money ball, baby. If you get it right, you get 3 points. If you get it wrong, you go down 3 points. We got to mix this thing up a little bit as we come down the stretch here. I think maybe we should have a week at some point in these final 30 games where it's like every game is double or something, or every game is a money ball.
Jacob just changing the rules.
No kidding.
I'm just keeping things exciting for
to
the folks
suit
at
his
home.
own needs is what it is.
Justin, the Thunder go down to Orlando for their second meeting with the Magic. First meeting was at home. Orlando had a lot of injured guys. The Thunder won that game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had, I think, a career high and a franchise high 6 and 1s in that game. What happens down in Walt Disney World on Tuesday?
I'm excited to watch Oklahoma City play a national TV game, not on the second night of a back-to-back.
Finally.
And I think for that reason, not that reason alone, but because of that, I expect a good performance from Oklahoma City. I expect them to come out much like they did today with a goal of making a statement. I think heading into the All-Star break, your last opportunity to kind of set the tone heading into a week off, and getting to do so on national TV against a young team in the East that has a lot of parallels to your own, that's a big opportunity. And I think there's a lot of like fun individual matchups within that. We got robbed of this matchup being on national TV last year, and now we get to have the fulfillment. And I think the Thunder are going to come out and take advantage and come away with the win.
Nick, what do you got?
3 things came to mind in this game. 1, historically, teams are known for sleepwalking through the last game before All-Star. Second thing that came to mind is Orlando is horrible on the road, actually really good at home. Like I think 17-7 at home.
It's very similar to the Thunder's records.
Yep.
Yep.
So the first 2 would almost lead me to believe, especially because Oklahoma City is sending quite a few guys to Indianapolis, that they could be the sleepwalking team. It's tough to beat Orlando at home. But what I can't get over is how abysmal the Magic are at shooting threes and how good the Thunder have been this season at shooting threes. I really think this is one of those very simple games. If Oklahoma City just wins the 3-point efficiency battle in this game, it's probably a pretty straightforward win, because Orlando is like second worst in 3-point. Let's say it's had this crazy game shooting. Take a lot of threes, make a lot of threes, and you're probably okay. Now it's against like the driving Thunder, maybe more like make good drives and smart kickouts for threes. I'm not saying just hoist threes, but it should come down to that.
So you got a W.
Got a W.
I am taking the W as well. The 2 gentlemen that are not here tonight, JD has a W. Taylor has an L.
Oh,
wow.
Wait, does he lose 3 points?
If he gets it wrong, he loses 3 points.
So everybody's a W besides Taylor?
Yes. If the Thunder lose, we all drop 3 and Taylor gains 3.
He'll be last.
Will he?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah.
He'll be
He would.
27. Justin will be 27. Silva, you'll be
he'd be
29. I'll be
tied.
33. He'll be tied with Justin for last.
Wow.
It's a big game, boys.
It is a big game.
Taylor Peters,
Can't
or he could
wait.
take a huge lead.
He could
Yeah.
take a huge lead. We can't let that happen.
That's why I'm saying
We on the
gonna
heels of a
change up
Chiefs Super
rules.
Bowl, we can't let
Ugh.
that happen.
we're going to change up some. We're going to have, hey, you guys that are in the comments over there, if you have any ideas on how we can make these predictions a little more exciting, variable down the stretch, let us know. We're going to mix it up. We're going to have some fun. It's kind of like a game of Mario Kart. You think you're in the lead, and then you get red shelled in the last 5 feet.
I know it's going to happen. I'm going to be first place with like a week left in the season, and Jacob's going to say, well, if your name's Nick and you live in Dallas, every game is an automatic -2 unless the team wins by 30. Like, where did that rule come from? Oh, I just want to mix it up.
I like Smoot's idea here. We let opponents pick money balls for each other.
No.
That's interesting.
Get out of here.
It's interesting, but it's just a recipe for
No.
people to come back, and we don't want that.
I will say, if the Thunder beat the Magic for next week's graphic, even though I'll be tied with Taylor, I will 100% put him last. and
Yes.
move myself up a slot.
Optically, yes.
Yes.
Any big predictions for the Magic game specifically, other than 4 dubs and an L from the team?
I think J-Dub is going to have another banger.
That's going to be interesting because I think it's going to be Dort on Banchero again. They like that matchup.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be J-Dub probably on Franz Wagner. Orlando plays like 2 more traditional style bigs. And we'll have Chet Holmgren out there. So that's always a fun matchup. I thought Chet, for the most part, held up pretty well against Sabonis today, which has been a real issue for him in the first 2.
Yeah.
I mean, Jalen Suggs is a good defender, and Shai just tore him to freaking shreds last time.
Yep.
It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a fun one. I think the Thunder bench is going to have a pretty decent game. It all hinges on those 5 Ousmane Dieng minutes to me. Gentlemen, anything else before we get out of here?
No, let's get out. Let's go.
Let's get out of here. Hey, thank you guys so much for tuning into the podcast. We really appreciate you. If you were one of the many people in the live stream tonight, I know there's a lot of differing opinions on the whole Josh Giddey, the discourse trademark, Justin. But we appreciate you guys hanging out and chatting. The comments, I was going to say, is a safe space. It might not be a safe space based on how some of you guys talk to each other. But regardless, we appreciate that you guys are in here hanging out with us, having a good time. If you download the podcast version of this on your podcast platform of choice, please make sure to drop a 5-star rating. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're watching the YouTube video, go click that like button, help the algorithm out. It pops up on more For You pages, helps the YouTube channel continue to grow, which it's growing at a very, very fast rate. So we really appreciate that. We'll be back Wednesday after the Thunder take on the Orlando Magic. Tuesday night, we'll be here Wednesday to talk about that game, some all-star stuff, and just some big picture like stretch run of the NBA season. Should be a blast. You guys have a great start to your week. We'll see you in a few days. Until then, as always, Thunder up.